In 1995, a man named McArthur Wheeler robbed 2 Pittsburgh banks. No mask, no disguise, full face, broad daylight. He walked straight up to the tellers, took the money, and left. When police showed him the security footage afterward, he stared at the screen, genuinely baffled, and said, "But I wore the juice." The juice. Lemon juice. He'd read that lemon juice works as invisible ink, so he concluded, logically, to him, that rubbing it on his face would make him invisible to cameras. He even tested it beforehand, took a Polaroid of himself, didn't see his face clearly. Confirmed. He wasn't mentally ill, he wasn't drunk, he was just completely, catastrophically, and absolutely certain about something that was completely wrong. And that distinction matters more than you think. Because when 2 psychologists at Cornell, David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger, read about Wheeler in a local almanac, they didn't laugh and move on. They asked a different question. How does someone get that confident about something that wrong? So they ran a study. And what they found didn't just explain McArthur Wheeler. It explained your coworker, your uncle at Thanksgiving, the guy in every comment section who did his own research and is now an expert in things that took other people decades to study. And honestly, at some point, in some domain, it probably explains you too. Welcome to the Dunning-Kruger effect. So Dunning and Kruger ran their study at Cornell. They tested people on logical reasoning, English grammar, and humor. Yes, humor. They literally tested whether people could identify what was objectively funny, and then asked everyone to estimate how well they did compared to everyone else. And here's what happened. The people who scored in the bottom 12% estimated they performed better than 62% of their peers. Not slightly off, not a little generous with themselves. They thought they were crushing it while actually finishing last. And here's the part that makes this genuinely fascinating and slightly terrifying. They weren't lying. They weren't performing. They genuinely believed it. What does that really mean? It means there's a curve, a graph. Y-axis is confidence, how much you think you know. X-axis is actual competence, how much you actually know. And at the very beginning of that curve, right when you've just learned a little about something, confidence shoots straight up to the top. Peak confidence, minimum knowledge, maximum certainty. They call that first peak Mount Stupid. You know that person who reads one article about intermittent fasting and is suddenly correcting everyone's lunch order? That's Mount Stupid. It's not reserved for people with low IQs or bad intentions. It's the natural first stop for every human being who has ever learned anything. The problem isn't arriving there. The problem is planting a flag and never leaving. And then something happens. You keep learning. You go deeper. One article becomes 10. One video becomes a rabbit hole at 2 in the morning with 17 tabs open, and the slowly dawning realization that you have no idea what you're talking about. And instead of feeling smarter, you feel like a complete fraud. That's not a malfunction. That's the valley of despair. And it means the learning is actually working. Here's the thing though, and this is the part Dunning and Kruger found genuinely wild. The same reason people get stuck on Mount Stupid is the same reason the valley feels so brutal. They called it the double burden. What does that mean in plain English? To know you're bad at grammar, you have to know the rules of grammar. If you don't know the rules, you can't know you're breaking them. The skill you need to evaluate your performance is the exact same skill as the performance itself. Novices don't have it yet. That's not stupidity. That's just where they are on the map. So most people hit the valley, feel terrible, and make a decision, not the right one. They retreat. They find a simpler version of the topic, one that lets them feel confident again, and they go back up, back to the peak, back to the megaphone, back to being very certain about something they've now decided not to look at too closely. The valley isn't a sign you're not cut out for something. It's the price of admission to actually knowing what you're doing. Most people just don't pay it. So what happens to the ones who do? Here's where it gets interesting. Here's the plot twist nobody puts in the thumbnail. The Dunning-Kruger curve doesn't just run in one direction. Because when Dunning and Kruger looked at their top performers, the people who actually crushed the tests, those people consistently underestimated how well they did relative to everyone else. Not by a little, significantly. The most competent people in the room thought they were just average, and the least competent thought they were exceptional. Let that sit for a second. The reason high performers underestimate themselves is almost tragically logical. When you're genuinely good at something, it feels easy to you, so you assume it feels easy to everyone. You think, if I can figure this out, surely everyone can, which means I'm nothing special. Except no. Not everyone can. That's literally why you're the one doing it. Meanwhile, the people broadcasting the loudest, the ones dominating the group chat, talking over the actual experts in the meeting, posting their hot takes with zero hesitation, they're not more capable. They just haven't learned enough yet to know what they don't know. Confident ignorance next to doubting expertise. And in almost every room, every comment section, every company in the world. It's the confident ignorance that gets the airtime. That's not a personality quirk. That's a structural problem. And knowing it exists is the first move toward not being buried by it. So what do you actually do about it? Because knowing the name of a cognitive bias is not the same as escaping it. I know people who could define Dunning-Kruger perfectly and still argue with their doctor about lab results they found on Reddit. The information alone doesn't move you. What moves you is one uncomfortable habit: actively asking whether you're wrong. Not rhetorically, not as a debate tactic, actually looking for the evidence that you might be missing something, and then sitting still long enough to hear it. It's not about being the most humble person in the room. It's about being the most accurate one. Those aren't the same thing, and the difference is everything. Every single time you pause before broadcasting and ask, what am I actually missing here? Instead of, why doesn't everyone just get this? You're casting a vote for a different version of yourself. Not the version that wins every argument, the version that's right about more things more often, because they stayed curious enough to find out. I'll be honest. Staying that curious requires something deeper than discipline. For me, it starts with knowing I don't have all the answers and being genuinely okay with that. That posture changes how you move through every conversation, every disagreement, every room. Do the math. One question. Am I wrong about this? Asked once a day. That's 365 moments a year where you chose calibration over ego. Stack that across 5 years, and you've built the kind of judgment that makes people come to you, not because you were the loudest, because you were right when it actually mattered. Or you could keep going. Keep explaining things you learned yesterday to people who've spent years studying them. Keep winning the argument. Keep feeling certain. That's an option. The next 5 years are coming either way. The only question is whether you're still on Mount Stupid when they arrive, or whether you finally started climbing. If this hit different, smash that like button and subscribe, because we've got more coming that'll make you significantly less annoying at dinner parties. And drop your story in the comments. Have you ever caught yourself on Mount Stupid? Or do you have someone in your life who has been permanently camped up there with a megaphone? Be specific, be honest, because the fact that you're even asking the question means you're already on the slope, and that's the whole point.